Oh, here's Sophia.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. The date is May 20th, 2021. It may feel like July, but it is May 20th. And I'm going to call our final parent council meeting to order for the school year. I want to welcome everybody who is here on our Zoom meeting live. And I also want to welcome those who are watching later on at our P-CCS official YouTube channel. Thank you all for being here. My name is Judy Hart, and I am serving as your P-CCS Parent Council President. And I am in the final weeks of having an East Middle Schooler and an Isbister Elementary student, and almost with a high school student and a middle school student. So I want to introduce also my esteemed board members who I am very privileged to welcome here, starting with our Vice President.
Good afternoon. My name is Pam Cornell Allen, and as Judy mentioned, I have been serving as the Parent Council Vice President.
And we also have our membership coordinator and recording secretary.
Yeah, Andrea Schultz, membership coordinator, and filling in today as recording secretary. I have 2 kids at Discovery.
Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge our corresponding secretary who is serving in her final parent council meeting. I'll have you introduce yourself. And Sophia, we just want to say that we are grateful to have you here. And I'll go ahead and have you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia Salim. I'm the corresponding secretary for the Parent Council, and this is my last Parent Council meeting as corresponding secretary. I'm sure I'll attend as a citizen or something, even though my youngest child is going to be graduating from high school in the coming weeks, but was really a great journey to be here in the Parent Council, and I'm going to miss all of you guys. But yeah, there's a lot that we're going to be doing in today's meeting, so looking forward to that.
Thank you, Sophia. I just want to add, I know on behalf of Pam and Andrea and I, you have been a rock. You have been a very graceful and extraordinarily intelligent addition to our Parent Council. I just feel very grateful that you were one of our board members and also to count you as a friend during that process. So thank you very much for serving. You've been a delight to have on board. So thank you. I really appreciate it. We all do.
Thank you so much. I feel likewise. I think it was a very strong bond that we developed. Hope to keep that going.
Absolutely. I normally will go right into our Parent Council business, but today I know with our May events already occurring, which we're going to be addressing the end of the year events for the school year, we're going to get right to talking with our Superintendent of Schools, Monica Merritt, who we are very happy to have with us today. We're going to get right to it because I know that your schedule is tight. You have honors night tonight and several other nights during the week. So I'm going to let you go.
Well, thank you, President Hart, and thank you to the entire executive board. And tonight with honors night, but I'll be at F&O. So there are so many competing things that are happening. But I thank you for mentioning honors night. I know that a few of our board members are here. President McQueen was able to be at honors night on Monday. And even in this limited gathering orders, having kids have the opportunity to be celebrated in person was huge. And Mr. Brandon was there live streaming that event, so all of us could see that as well. And I think that's just the beginning of what we will see coming for the next few events for the end of the year, really taking that opportunity to celebrate our kids and their accomplishments and thinking of the world beyond COVID-19, because that's been such a focus of everything that we do, of course, as we've been navigating this pandemic. So it's just really a great event. We've had 2 now, and tonight is the final honors events. And so I did think it would be appropriate to talk about a few of the end of the year events today. I know that's on a lot of our the minds as we're making these transitions. You just shared being a 5th grade parent and an 8th grade parent. And then we know we also had Sophia talk about having a high schooler. As many of you know, the governor had an announcement today, which yet changed another order. And I am here to say that we don't get prior notice of any of these changes. And I know it frustrates people at times when they want to know, how does that impact our end of the year events and why haven't we talked about it? But there's a process to all of that. The order will not be given out until Monday. So we'll have to review that and talk with our team. And if there are any changes that we need to implement, we'll communicate that. But with that being said, we do have some big events on the horizon. On June the 2nd, we are celebrating our seniors through prom. Just as a unique experience, I'll say, within the current guidelines, working with the city of Plymouth. I think the theme is called a Starry Night, having students have restaurant opportunities where they can go and make special reservations. They have the Pin Theater set up where they can take, the marquee will have something decorated on there and they can take photographs there. We're then right now utilizing the Park PARC, which we can kind of keep the kids in a safer, more contained area where they'll have a DJ and more photo opportunities, being outside and remaining safe, and trying to put mitigation factors in place. At the same time, just making sure that we're allowing kids to celebrate, which is what has been an incredibly challenging year, but a wonderful journey of K-12 and giving them that opportunity to do so together. So that is happening on June the 2nd. Graduation then begins with our Starkweather graduates on June the 9th, and that will take place at Heritage in Canton, the Heritage Park, and that will also be an outdoors event. Then at PCEP, we have 2 graduations on Saturday. That will be an in-person event on the 12th, and that will be Plymouth and Canton. And then Salem is scheduled right now for Sunday. And with that graduation at the time that was set up based on the limits, and we'll definitely have conversations if that changes based on the new order, recognizing that we're not too far out from that. So we need to be mindful of parents' plans. But like I said, we will update you along the way. Our 5th grade schools are also planning for safe gatherings for 5th grade transitions. When we say mitigation factors, utilizing being outside and having that space. We had initially under the orders talked about not having food, but we're adapting. Still won't be able to have food, just trying to be safe, but giving little trinkets and just things to make it memorable. And I think for kids just celebrating and families just having that opportunity to have that culminating event is special. I believe at the middle schools, the current plan that's in place was doing a drive-through event for their 8th grade students, just looking at size limitations with the number of 8th grade students that were there. I think that those were the plans that are still in place. And again, as I don't know, will this change, but we will update families if that event changes just based on the new order. But all in all, I think we have 15 or 16 school days left and just opportunities to celebrate our young people. And I think in the midst of what's been a year that started in March of last year, really being able to end this year with some more in-person events is so important. So important, especially the topic that you're talking about this evening for social, emotional, and mental health, and just grabbing a little piece of connection and a little bit of normalcy. And I'm glad that we're able to provide this. And I thank all of our staff that have worked so hard to make these experiences meaningful for our students. So speaking of social emotional support, I thank the board. They really have been very just committed in terms of vision and financial resources, human resources to really support our recommendations to bring forward more supports for our students. So what we're recommending to the board this year in the budget for next year will be the addition of 3 high school counselors at PCEP. So that will be 1 counselor per each high school. Currently, their caseload is very large at the high school, as we know. And so having opportunities, not just to deal with academics, but also to have check-ins on time to help support other needs that students may be experiencing. At the middle school level, we've seen such positive response from, well, K-12, the social emotional classes and supports that we put out throughout the day. So at the middle school, we are adding 3 additional FTE for social emotional teachers that will be there. It's a 0.6 course that will take place at all 5 middle schools, as well as an experience for the virtual academy as well. And then at the elementary school, all 14 buildings are investing in a social emotional supports person to really be there for high level needs that might just take place right there within the school day, that they have that person that they can have as a support and help to network and work with families as well. So really just thoughtful use of our ESSER funds, which we still been struggling with when those federal funds are going to be released, but really being strategic in how we utilize those supports to really help our students as we look to navigate this world post-pandemic and a lot of the challenges that they have endured and the trauma that we don't even know the impacts of this for years to come. So readying our support system to be there to provide them the needed supports that they need from now and beyond. So I think that that's good news I want to share. As we look to this summer, I'm very excited, and Ms. Braille may want to add a little bit more later, but about our summer programming. We just thought for our families, the stress that has been this year being a lot of times remote and not having opportunities for in-person, we wanted to make sure that we provided for unfinished learning throughout the summer, but also opportunities listening to student voice and engagement for camps and just fun activities that students can do here in school in person. And so we are launching a summer program that I think is fabulous, really looking at listening to the kids to say, what do you want? Listening to our teachers to say, what kind of camps would you like to put on? And so we're putting this camp out. Registration is tomorrow, K-12. We're going to have summer camp activities. We're going to have just our traditional summer academy. We'll have credit recovery for the high school. We'll also have credit advancement. All of these courses, except for credit advancement, are going to be no charge to our students and families. And so they're layered for opportunities that you may take a 1-week STEM camp and then come back and take another a writing camp or something along those lines. And so they've been advertising, and I think there's a lot of interest, and I'm really looking forward to this opportunity. The caveat for being a free program is that you're enrolled for the school year in the fall. So that is important, that we want to invest in our families, our community, and we're using our federal dollars to support this summer opportunity for families. And then the final piece I wanted to share as we think about the fall and what does that look like. We just want to give stability to our families. So I want to announce now our plans to finalize our instructional delivery model for the fall. We have our reentry task force and our individual committees working to finalize a plan for the fall. Their date to finalize those plans will be June the 1st, with the plan to present to the Board of Education on June the 8th. So ideally, as we have these plans, everybody will know when they go home from June 11th, what school looks like in the fall. And things COVID related are looking like we're on the other side of this surge. Many people being vaccinated. It just looks like we're in a good place. So we're fully prepared for a return to 5 full days of in-person learning, just our normal traditional schedule, returning for the fall from K-12. Now we do have some guidelines that we're committed to because we just don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. So we're staffing so that we're 3 feet at minimum between students in the fall as well. So our staffing will go into that with the understanding that if nothing changes from today, we're still okay to be fully in person all day. And then at lunch, when students are unmasked, if we are at a place where we're still wearing masks, we're planning for 6 feet to still be in place. So really taking the same plan that we have right now, except for the high school, would go to a full day, ensuring at least 3 feet of spacing between students and instructional spaces and 6 feet in spaces where they're eating. So really excited about that opportunity. What our plans will be is to say, this is what 5 days looks like. This is what a hybrid model would look like. So we would know that in advance in the event that we have another surge. And then finally, in the event that we we had to pivot to a fully remote environment. We would already have that schedule so that families would already have that to prepare and plan. So with that, we are planning for our full return. We are planning for 100% virtual academy option. We will then again plan to communicate that at the June 8th board meeting so that everybody goes with a proactive mindset and can just settle into summer knowing what the fall looks like. So with that, I know that we have some questions that are already submitted, or if we have any questions from the floor, I'll turn it back over to you, President Hart, to lead that question and answer.
Thank you. So we did have, just for those, just for clarity, we had a Google form that parents were able to fill out before if they were not able to be here, or if they were able to be here and just wanted to submit their questions. So the first question is, what is the district doing about improving communication in the district to make sure that the virtual, the VA, and the face-to-face are both receiving consistent and equitable information? I believe, and I sometimes like to be the bridge to communication. I believe that this parent described, she was a high school parent and was trying to get information. Notice that sometimes the face-to-face, in-person students were receiving information that she was not. I was kind of reflecting, being a VA middle school parent. I did not see this because we have communication that comes from Morgan Bone, who is our VA paraprofessional, and she communicates, and she also loops us in with our East Middle School and all of the other middle school newsletters. So I think the absence of that at the high school is what she's referring to, if I'm correct.
And I can take that one, Monica. So Morgan is actually across all K-12
Okay.
virtual academy programs, and there is a weekly newsletter that goes out from the virtual academy. So I'm wondering maybe if the parent is not receiving that weekly academy newsletter, virtual academy newsletter at the high school level. That newsletter, Frank, who's also on this call, works to ensure that the communication pieces that are going to the PSEP newsletter are actually in that virtual academy newsletter as well. So I'm wondering if maybe there's a disconnection or disconnect there with the parent not receiving them, but there is a weekly newsletter that goes out that includes some student artwork and some student work and things. It is sent out by Morgan as well. So
Okay.
Judy, this is Gina. I know the person who sent that question. It's the emails they're not receiving, Beth and Frank and Nick. And I have a face-to-face student, they have a virtual. I forward every email I get from the district and from the high school. Eventually, they do get the newsletter with the summary, but even like summer school, that's out there to the community way before they receive it. And there's some things they never receive. So that's where this parent within the virtual feels like she's not part of the district. And it's very frustrating for her. And I send everything. So that's what she was talking about is there was summer school. The testing was one. There's many different emails I forward all the time. So that's what they're missing.
Hey, Gina, can you do me a favor and have that parent get in touch with me directly? Because there could be if it's one parent, there could be a different issue going on in terms of like the email address we have in the system or something else. So we'd be happy to help. Is there any way you could connect me directly with the parent?
I can, but I can tell you, I walked the parent through. They have went through signing up for the emails and the RS feeds. They've done it multiple times, and I've went through. It's not a new parent to this district. So up until they got into virtual, which was they had face-to-face at the beginning, and then when second semester virtual, they don't get communication. So that maybe not other virtuals, but this parent, it's been a very rough year and being isolated.
Make that connection. We'll take care of it for sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I wanted to ask too, I thought there was a virtual page on the district's website now. Is that news posted there like the other news? Those newsletters, are they posted on that?
The virtual academy specific stuff, I believe, is, but I think it sounds like the issue is we had an issue early on with MyStar, which is our information system, and the way people are tagged, but students are tagged to their home buildings. So we need to look on the backside to make sure that that is working well and that there's no hiccups in that as well. So, and Nick and Kurt and I will work on that to ensure that that's all smooth.
Okay. All right, so I'll go on to our second question. What are the district's plans to address the workload of our overstressed counselors? And I believe, Monica, you touched on that. And if there's any other details you could add to that, I'll give you an opportunity to do that.
So I would say that's a more than just a counselor situation. Probably have about 2,000 employees that will fit into that category of stress this year working through a pandemic. And we truly are so appreciative of all of the work of all of our employees as they put their own stress aside and continue to give their best for kids. So appreciative of that. But definitely, as I shared with the counselors, just at PCEP, that was an ask, that was the #1 priority out of our budget transformation from the high school team to get additional counseling support. But we also are looking just K-12 at coordination of our counseling program. And so that through the teaching and learning department will be discussing planning for that over the summer. That will provide a little bit of more consistency of support looking through that lens of K-12 for our counselors.
I believe you also addressed the next two, but I will, in the effort of transparency, it was also the question, what are the district's plans for next year? Will we inform students and parents in a timely fashion with correct information?
Yeah, so that is the plan, full return for in-person. We're getting away from the word safe start. So it's just P-CCS, full in-person learning. With those, the parameters, we're staffing for those parameters automatically. 3 feet between instructional spaces for students, 6 feet we're eating, and then a fully virtual model. And I will share, we had to, of course, for staffing reasons, put that deadline to choose the virtual academy out early. That's just a part of our process when students are registering for classes and class selection. What we did say, however, realizing that that was so early and parents not really knowing what the plan was going to be or what's going to happen with COVID. Just talking about that potential to have a waiting list, of course, no guarantees, but as we staff for these various programs, just like we would in person, if there's 22 kids can fit in that class and maintain, that class size. If the same thing is happening in a virtual where we have a teacher assigned, say there's only 15 kids that have signed up for it, that would allow potentially for other kids to, from a waiting list, still take that virtual option. So we'll look through that once all staffing is finalized, and we'll communicate early if there's more opportunities for either virtual or in person, a switch at a later time. But again, June 8th is our plan to have all of our fall plans communicated at the board meeting so that families go home for the summer knowing what to expect in the fall.
And lastly, this was submitted to us, and if this is also should be directed to someone at a school level, I understand that as well. And the question is, how would the district, and also how should, who would they talk to at the school in order to communicate with parents during a separation or a divorce? I thought it was a question at first that I thought, maybe we'll take it and address it individually, but I thought actually this, everyone hearing it here might be a good information.
So definitely we would direct people to work with their buildings in particular. And so we see, all families would still be primary contact, and so be able to receive that information either through a separation or through a divorce. If there's actually custody agreements, then we get that information here in terms of who could have, if there's something that's specified in a court order, we work along through that. But buildings would best be able to support families, and then they work out of Kurt Tiskwitz's office as well, to just make sure when we're looking in MyStar, for example, what's listed as the primary person or the secondary person. And right now, if email goes out, it would go out to the primary person. So if you're in a situation where you're separated or divorced and you want to say, hey, we need this email to go to primary and secondary, or whoever's first on the list, but just really accommodating to make sure that all families have their rights recognized as it relates to the educational environment of their students.
Great. Are there any last questions that I haven't addressed? Thank you, Monica. I know that you have many places to be during this week and this month. May is the new December, right? But we're welcoming the busy right now, getting back to normal. So thank you for being here. And thanks so much for your time and for your effort and everything that you do for our community and our students all year long. Thank you
so much. Everyone have a great afternoon.
Okay. So we, moving on from our end of the school year updates, we are going to just take a step back to our parent council business for a brief moment. I would like to, and Nick, if you are able to post the April minutes so that we can take a look at those April minutes. Pam Cornell Allen stepped in as recording secretary last month and took the minutes. Our board was able to look over in detail and take a look at those minutes. So we are going to post those April minutes. I sent them to you over email to post. Being that our board has taken a look at them, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. Let the records show that Andrea Schultz gave the motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Thank you, Sophia. And we will put those into record, and then we will, as soon as our meeting is adjourned, we will take a look at giving those to our communications department and post those with Carly Race so that not only the general membership, but the whole district can view our April minutes from last month. Thank you very much. The next item up on our business is our elections. It has felt like this past year when we go to elections here, it has felt like this last year has been slightly longer than a year, but we are here. We opened up our nominations for parent council officers actually in February. I made that announcement verbally on our February meeting. We have also called for nominations for people to nominate either themselves or someone else for an officer for parent council by email, as well as by each meeting that we have had by Zoom in February, March, April, and we have actually held the elections today in May 1 month late in hopes to get our nominations of people who are willing to serve on our parent council board. And gratefully, we have 2 new members, with member Salim stepping down of her board position as corresponding secretary. I was very grateful to have 2 new members, Anne Marie Garrity, who has been a parent council general membership, a phenomenal former educator who now has 2 elementary students. I'm not able to see Anne Marie. Are you on the call?
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Anne Marie. I just want everybody to see you. Are you able to just tell us a couple? Sorry, I did give you a couple of details. I like jumped the gun. I got excited. If you want to give a couple details, and I'll let them know, you can let them know what office that you are seeking nomination for.
So hi, my name's Anne Marie. I have 2 kids at Farrand Elementary, a current 2nd grader and 4th grader, so soon to be 3rd and 5th grader. I was a teacher, I like to say, in my pre-kid life. I was a math teacher, and I will be running for a corresponding secretary, and I'm excited. I like the parent council. I think it's a great format for parents to be able to communicate with the district and offer feedback. I wish more parents took advantage of it, so that would be nice, but I think more people have this year with it being on Zoom, and that's it.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate it, Anne Marie, and we're really glad to have you as a nominee. We really appreciate it. I also want to ask, do we have Antoinette Jackson on the call? I'm not sure if Antoinette is.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't
Okay.
remember her joining.
Antoinette, I will say a couple of things about Antoinette, who is, she has sought the nomination for membership coordinator, and I think she's going to do a phenomenal job. Antoinette has more energy than I have ever witnessed in a person, definitely during pandemic and maybe even pre-pandemic as well. She has students at Liberty, who her son is also going to be going to Salem High School as well. She will have a student entering middle school, and she will also have an elementary student. So I very much appreciate it. And she is seeking to run for office of membership coordinator. She was very excited to strategize to get more parents and more families involved in our parent council meetings. And so I really appreciate that. One of our current officers, Andrea Schultz, who is currently serving as membership coordinator, as recording secretary many of the times. And Andrea, I'll just allow you to introduce yourself and say who, what office you will be seeking the nomination for.
Andrea Schultz, current membership coordinator, and I am seeking the recording secretary. Like I said, I have 2 kids in Discovery, and I have not only recorded the minutes for this meeting a few times throughout this year, I have also been recording secretary of my church council for, I think it was like 4 years. So I have a lot of experience, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to working with the new ladies as well.
Thank you. So putting a pin in our 3 positions that we have people who are nominated for, I am coming before our general membership. I have addressed the issue that we have a vacancy of a person to be nominated for president and vice president as well. Nick, if you are able to pull up the bylaws that I sent you, we have governing bylaws for parent council, which were actually drafted while I was on the board as membership coordinator about 4 years ago. And if you are able to pull up the bylaws, I'll read this out loud so that our general membership can hear this. Each person elected shall hold only 1 office at a time, and each person can hold 2 consecutive annual terms in each office. We have not received a nomination for a new person to serve as president or as vice president of our parent council. Looking at section 4.3, I have served as president for 2 consecutive terms. Though it actually has seemed like one long running term during our pandemic. Pam Cornell Allen has also served 2 terms as vice president. Being that we have made the calls recommended by our bylaws and we have not received another person to step in and nominate themselves or someone else as president or vice president, we have the option as parent council. The failure of the general membership to fill the positions and take responsibility for the parent council offices shall allow the officers the power to dissolve the parent council, who must then notify the general membership of the dissolution. So I came to our board today with our options, which is number 1, to dissolve our parent council, without an acting president or vice president who haven't served fewer than 2 terms, or we looked to a second option, which would be to add a section 4.3.1 to amend this section and allow for the extenuating circumstance of when a person is not available or has not nominated themselves or someone else to fill an office, to allow for 1 additional term in this office. So it would be an extenuating circumstance. The normal and governing normality would be to have a person who will only hold 2 consecutive annual terms, but the section 4.3.1 would allow for an extenuating circumstance. Our board, if you'd like to verbalize, we voted on whether to dissolve or to amend. I'll call on each of the board members to verbalize whether they wanted to dissolve parent council or amend the limitations. So I'm calling on Vice President Pam Cornell Allen. Would you like to dissolve or amend the limitations?
Well, I'm wondering if, because my position is impacted, if I need to abstain.
You need to abstain. If so moved, if that's how you feel.
I mean, I think is there not a conflict of interest?
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
Sophia Salim, would you like to vote to dissolve or to amend the limitations?
I would say amend.
Andrea Schultz, since you are a current board member, would you like to vote to dissolve or to amend the limitations?
I would like to amend the limitations, please.
Okay. I guess noting Pam's there, I know that this also involves my position as well, so I'll abstain as well. And we are now with the board, with the majority of the board voting to amend the limitations in an extenuating circumstance. I'm going to put that out for the general membership. Anyone here who is a voting representative of their school, our board has voted to amend the limitations, and you can vote by using yay or nay to vote on the board's recommendation to amend the limitations. So for anyone who is here as a parent council representative, those in favor.
Hey, real quick, Judy, just to make sure Gina has her question answered. It looks like her
okay,
hand
I'm
is up.
sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Gina, was there a question? Go ahead.
Thanks, Nick. We talked earlier, and I didn't know if you want to, do you have the whole motion to maybe read to everybody watching? Because I'm not sure if you did when we were talking earlier, there was something about the term limit, how many times somebody could be reinstated in the position. I don't know if you have all the language that you could read what they're actually voting on.
Right. I will have the asking for no more than one term, one extenuating additional term. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and then and so to be clear, if nobody steps up, like not to put pressure on the current position, if that person decides not to, then dissolution would be the option. If a current president did not want to do a 3rd term, not to put pressure on somebody, then it would be looking at dissolution, correct?
Correct. Those are the 2 options. If we didn't have a president to set agendas and fulfill their commitments, it would then go to section 11.1, which is the decision to dissolve.
Thank you.
Yeah, the board would have to vote on that. The general membership would be given 2 months. Sorry, I'm trying to locate that right here. The general membership would be given 2 months for that decision and for a person to be nominated in that position. And if someone stepped forward, it could be saved from dissolution. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and it clarifies, I think, for everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gina. I appreciate it. I'm going to do 2 things. Considering our extenuating circumstance, I'm going to allow any existing parent council representative to vote yay or nay to amend section 4.3 to allow for a no more than 1 additional term by an existing officer in an extenuating circumstance. And I'm also going to ask that those parent council representatives who are viewing this afterward on the official YouTube channel, you can also vote and we will take that into consideration. So all those who are present, thank you, Anne Marie, for yes, may verbal or put into the chat, yay or nay. All those in favor, please record yes or yay. And all those opposed to extending the term limitations to 1 additional term, feel free to vote nay, either in the chat or verbally. Thank you very much. So with that, I am going to, we have exactly 1 person running for each office.
Hey, Judy, I sorry to interrupt you, but I think that Ms. Jackson has joined us.
Oh, great.
Antoinette, are you with us?
Hi, let me see if I can turn my volume up. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, hi. Yes, thank you. Sorry. I hope you guys got my email. I'm everywhere. I have a track meet right now. I have a soccer, and my husband just had extensive knee surgery. So it's crazy right now. But I'm here.
I was just telling everyone how much energy you had. So everyone is definitely already, you know, got the info on how much you have going on. So I told them how much positive energy you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Appreciate it.
So that is Antoinette, who is going to be running for membership coordinator. With the vote on amending the section 4.3 on term limitations, I will nominate myself to serve as an additional term as president of parent council. Pam Cornell Allen, would you accept my nomination to run as an additional term as vice president?
Yes, I will.
I appreciate that very much. So we, with myself running as president, Pam Cornell Allen running as vice president, Andrea Schultz having introduced herself and running for, Andrea, you have so many positions now. I'm it's recording secretary.
Recording secretary.
Which you have been doing so kindly even previous to this. We have Anne Marie Garrity running as corresponding secretary, and Antoinette Jackson, thank you for joining us, as running for membership coordinator. All of those in favor as electing each of these people in their offices, if you could please, I know in the past that we have in our bylaws extend for just when there's only 1 person running for each office, you can give all those in favor yay, which you can put in the chat, or you can verbally motion here if you like. If you are a parent council representative who is watching this afterwards, please feel free to be on the record with your vote. You can email it into us at parentcouncil@pccsk12.com. All those in favor, for those who are running the offices which have been described, if you would please give yay or yes. Yay.
Yay.
All those opposed, you can give a nay, either in the chat or otherwise. Thank you. Thank you those who have run, those of you who have served, thank you. And we can get going this summer on working for next fall. With all of that behind us, I would like to thank you all for being very patient with that. I have a very esteemed guest, Beth Rail, who I remember one of our first parent council meetings getting to meet you, and it just feels like we have been through so much with you in these last 2 years. Beth Rail is our Chief Academic Officer for Plymouth Canton Community Schools, and she's going to be telling us about the P-CCS Student Mental Health Committee.
Yep.
Thank you, Beth, for being here.
Thanks for having us. So I have with me Frank Ruggiero, is our executive director of our director of external partnerships and external affairs. We're going to talk a little bit about the work of our student mental health committee at the district level. So and again, it's been 2 years, but 2 really interesting years. So in the fall of 2019, Frank and I collaborated and decided to, based on a lot of the needs that we were seeing across the district, us even beyond our boundaries and in the community, create what we wanted to call the Student Mental Health Committee at the district level. So in the fall of 2019, we formed this committee. Our mental health committee is really focused on strengthening our practices around mental health, trauma-informed care, and social and emotional learning across all of our classrooms and schools. And we know that this year has been incredibly challenging and, for everyone in our community, in the school system, parents, everybody across the spectrum, and staff, students, you name it. One of the things that we implemented a little bit differently this year was social emotional lessons across the elementary, middle school, and high school level, which you're all familiar with because of your young people taking part in those lessons. I want to talk a little bit about just some of the things that have been happening most recently, and then some of the things that we're looking to the fall for as well. And then I'll have Frank kind of fill in any gaps as well around what's happened over the course of the last couple of years. I know I'll miss some things as well. This May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So as we look at mental health awareness, there's a lot of things happening across the district. Green Out on Fridays, where folks are wearing green to really bring awareness to mental health supports. The high school is doing a specific focus on self-care this month with activities like the emotional first aid kit, self-affirmations for every day, dealing with stress and creating your own self-care kit, and morning motivational affirmations. As we look to what we have the capacity to do and what we need to partner with people to do, we're starting to develop more formal partnerships with local mental health agencies. We've been reaching out and doing we've been doing a lot of informal partnerships, but we're really formalizing those partnerships to make a stronger, more cohesive school and community connection for all of our young people. The big thing for us is really focusing on breaking down that stigma of mental health. There's still a large stigma around mental health, the mental health needs and supports. And there's still this perception that it's a negative thing, and it's not. It's really about mental wellness. So we like to use the terms mental health, mental wellness, just like we need physical health and physical wellness and physical well-being. So we're really looking at fostering relationships as the peer foundation of that. Relations between students, staff, and also some peer-to-peer support work. As we look to the fall, we're connecting with U of M and their Depression Center and other community resources and organizations. And we're going to be launching some of those peer-to-peer kind of training peer mentors with our students, our high school students specifically, And we're also looking at doing some kind of unique things that you'll hear more about in the coming weeks, but I can't really share too much about yet, but really looking at wrap around more wellness services at all of our buildings. We're working on a mental health bulletin that will go in campus, that will be provided for families, for students, that will provide a space where you can find all the resources in one place and don't have to go and look for them multiple different places. And also just does mental health and wellness support. Something that's coming up very soon, May 26th, we have a presentation that will be taking place called Finding Hope. And it's really about trauma, loss, and grief, and overcoming trauma and loss, and how to find supports and as we work through grief together. And so it'll be for parents and age appropriate high schoolers. That's going to be taking place at the Canton Little Theater. Of course, with our mitigation factors in place, we have a smaller group, so we'll be live streaming that out as well. And that will be a panel presentation that has folks, our community agencies coming together, and folks that have lost a loved one, to talk through how to support each other and how to be in this together and really help grow our social emotional needs and support each other again. Starting next year, every 6th through 12th grader at P-CCS, the student IDs, like here's my staff ID, on the back of the student IDs will be hotlines and crisis phone numbers for any student in crisis, so that it can be easily found in case there's any scenario where they're not with us and they need to be able to find help immediately, that outside of the school time, because we'll have, of course, supports in place for them here. We're also looking to the next fall. You talk about planning into fall. September is Suicide Awareness Month, so we're looking at staff, student, and parent trainings. We really want to partner with Parent Council a lot more on doing some cohesive, intentional stuff throughout the year to really help support mental health awareness, how to work together as a community and really support our students. And then next year, we're also planning a mental health fair. So in May of 2022, we'll have a full-scale mental health fair, as well as having mental health and mental wellness opportunities at all of our school events. So we look at back to school events, having some intentional focus and community awareness events there, so that it just becomes another part of what we do, just like academic support, and how we really help support our students in academic, social, emotional, and behavioral and mental health. So I'm going to ask Frank to kind of come in and pick up any of the pieces I probably missed here and there. And then we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
You did great, Beth. Couple things I will mention to the group. First of all, back when we started the program back in 2019, one of the things we felt very strongly about was to immediately get some very competent training for our staff, particularly about suicide and suicide prevention. So we worked with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and we did have what I would call a basic training for all of our high school and middle school staff. And I think we completed that training sometime last year because we had to do it in pieces with the group. But really what it focused on was two things. Number one, identifying, and our teachers are pretty clued in, but identifying a student that may be struggling and then getting support for the family, not acting as the counselor or anything of that nature, but identification of an issue and then getting support. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned to you all that our staff has had some basic training. Now, many of the members of the team that are on the mental health committee are the staff members that have really extensive experience in mental health. Many of you, especially those of you at the high school, may know who Kathy Grotus is, who's a school psychologist, but she's fantastic and she's very connected and she's been bringing a lot to this group. But there are probably maybe 12, 15 members on the committee, and we're going to be expanding that committee in the future to add some parents as well. So if there's any of you that have some interest, we'll likely be adding a few parent members to the group. This is not a quick fix. This is not something just for optics. This is something that was going on before COVID and will continue on long after, as we continue to try to as Kathy say, break down the stigma. You know, if you have a problem with your eye or your foot, you go to the doctor for those things and nobody thinks anything of it. So if you're having some struggles, there shouldn't be any, nobody should think twice about the fact that when you go to get support in that area. So it's really, we're going to do a lot of work on trying to break down the stigma, not just with the students, but with families as well. We'll do as much as we can to help parents, because this is a team effort. We're all going to have to get involved here. And I don't think any of us really know what the what all the effects are going to be from COVID, but we're doing our very best to be prepared for it. We always want to be proactive. We never want to be reactive. So I think that's a big part of what we're doing. The last thing I'll mention real quick, Beth, because I want to expand on this a little bit. The bulletin board that Beth mentioned is a Canvas bulletin board. And we've set up a very simple thing that you'll probably see before the end of the school year. It'll be within Canvas, so you'll be able to see it. The students will be able to see it. And Kathy Grotus, our school psychologist, is kind of ferreting the information out and determining what's appropriate for each level of student and parents of those students. And so those things you'll be seeing naturally as you do in Canvas already, and your students see in Canvas already, and they'll be there for them. So it's just one more support thing that we'll have available for you and for our students as well. So with that, Beth, I think we can take some questions. I mean,
there's one thing I wanted
please.
to mention too first is the makeup of our student mental health committee is actually all the mental health professionals across the, so our school psychologists, our counselors, our behavior specialists, our social workers, all of those folks, we come together regularly. We were doing monthly meetings last year, so we had to pause a little bit on some of that. We met at least bi-monthly this year, but we'll get back to monthly meetings next year. The purpose and the goal, or our goal starting last year, was to expand that committee. Our goal last year when we started in fall of 2019 was we'd solidify some things, know what we're doing, what our gaps are, and then expand the committee to include parents, and then as appropriate, some students as well. That kind of got paused a little bit just because of this thing that happened, this large global pandemic. And so as we reintegrate and re-enter next fall, we'll start to expand that committee. So again, anyone who's interested, we'll be reaching out to, we'd love to have you join, because what we're really doing is, as Superintendent Merritt always says, it takes a village, and it certainly does, especially in this area, because the more we support our kids and wrap our arms and our services around them, the better off we will all be together. So with that, we'll pause and take any questions you might have.
I don't really have a question. I just want to say I think this is so great, because I was in some of the different panels and meetings that we have with students and parents at all my kids' schools. And it was very interesting to hear a lot of the kids were suffering with suicidal thoughts and depression. We had a very open, candid discussion about it, and it was very alarming that they were really struggling with it, and so many. Especially this year. Was it COVID? Was it, family issues? I mean, it's all the above, but I'm so thankful you guys are taking this initiative to bring more of an awareness to it. I really love that badge idea. On the back, they'll have actual numbers that if they're not in school and they can't talk to anyone in the building, at home, they can make a phone call. I just think that's awesome.
I want to say too that I think the social emotional lessons have been a silver lining of this whole pandemic, the fact that the kids get that every day. And I know probably some days the kids roll their eyes or whatever at it, but it sticks. Like my son will sing some of those songs sometimes, when he gets upset, and it's like he's laughing, but this message is sticking. And so as crazy as a year as it's been, and as much as it stinks that took a pandemic to get there, I think that has been a huge silver lining. And I think I know I appreciate, and I've talked to other parents that have appreciated that too, and didn't realize just how important that was.
Thank you for sharing that. That's one of the things that we had planned to, and it did get exponentially compressed timeline. And it's one of those things that we know is important to carry forth. One of the positive things that we'll carry forth, as well as looking at some ways to ensure in our schedules that we have some support built into the actual schedule, whether, so as we talk about What's coming out of the building learning design teams at the high school is something called an ESA, extension support and advisory type programming, and looking very intentionally and purposefully about how we ensure that this place, which is a very large place, doesn't feel large to our students, that every student has someone who they know cares deeply about them and is here to support them and help them in their journey.
Beth and Frank, I wanted to mention, I mentioned it to Judy, and I'm sure you get a million resources. A friend of mine works for a nonprofit in the Chicago area called Erica's Lighthouse. And it's like I said, it's a nonprofit suicide prevention, but their key is to bring programs to schools. So, but aside from the school being able to benefit from it, it's a good resource for parents to look. They have a lot of free content on their website that parents can review, just as a resource. If anybody, has a friend or whatever, shoot them the link. It's just something to look into. There's, I'm sure, tons of nonprofits out there, but this is one particular one that my friend works for. They had the owners, unfortunately had a daughter that took her own life, and that really spurred them into action. So now they're making sure that that doesn't happen.
Thank you, Andrea. We will absolutely look into that. And I will tell you that we have some things in mind that we think will come forward. And the folks you're going to hear from today have been in the schools, have done a terrific job, particularly in the middle schools. I've heard their presentation before. If you haven't heard it, I promise you're going to find what Carrie's doing for you today is very helpful.
I will make sure, Andrea, that I pass on the Erica's Lighthouse information to both Beth and Frank. We'll try to make sure that information for any parent who would like that as a resource, maybe put that in our minutes or post on our Facebook. And I think going back to the topic of this, the fact that mental health awareness that May is mental health awareness was kind of a side note for us. It was like, oh, wow, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. We as a parent council board have been discussing how many parents have come to us with saying, January, February, March, I had to focus on my son or daughter's mental health. We had to get, help in that regard. And it was overwhelming to all of us how many people we were hearing talk about that. And for those of you out there who have talked about it with a friend, who have come to us at parent council or have come to a teacher, thank you, because there is a kind of hesitation to talk about any mental health or the topic of suicide, especially in regard to, in regard to our kids. There's a pause. Should I talk about this? Should I bring up the topic? And so I think anyone who's just starting that conversation, thank you, Beth, thank you, Frank, for the committee work that you're doing. Are there any other questions for the Student Mental Health Committee?
Hi.
We will.
I've got a question. Can you guys hear me?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, this is Dave. I'm new to the crew here.
Hi, Dave.
Question for you, Bethany. And I really liked your analogy on the mental fitness, kind of analogous to physical fitness. And I think we're certainly covering the one end of the book, the bookends here with some of the suicide talks. And when I was kind of a new engineer at the company, my boss's daughter took her own life in high school, and I still remember that day. I mean, that was 10 years ago, and going to that funeral, it was just, it still breaks my heart today. I can't even imagine what he was going through, and just seeing all the faces and hearing all the stories. And I think that we have to talk about it. Otherwise, people don't want to talk about it, and it just gets pushed to the back, and it's tragic every time. But what I wanted to ask was, on the other side of that spectrum, I see in myself and I see in my son, because I work from home now. I don't have to go in. I'm an engineer, so I just sit in front of my computer all day, and then I have my phone within hand's reach at all times. I've got my work phone within hand's reach. And one of the messages we got at work was with regard to screen addiction. And this was maybe a week ago, so I started noticing it in myself. I'm always in front of something. And I noticed it also with my son, because he was doing the virtual learning like everybody else for a while. And now he can't seem to do any homework unless he's in front of his computer. He needs to be in front of the glowing box. So my question is screen addiction, is that something that you guys are looking at? Because I feel like it's an impediment. I mean, it's certainly a tool we need, but I feel like it's getting overused and it's turning into a crutch for actually doing the work.
Yep, and I can talk about a couple of things that happened, and some of this was pre-pandemic, some of it is actually happening now. So one thing that happened last year pre-pandemic was we had a screening of the movie Screenagers at our middle schools, and we had some parent forums and did some talking around the whole aspect of, for many of our young people, they're attached to this like it's a leash, right? And so how do we all really work together to limit the amount of time people are in front of screens, and more importantly, or as importantly, how do we get young people to communicate with each other and to communicate with adults? Because I think we can all agree that we've seen maybe a change in communication skills with young people, and how do we kind of address that? So members of the Parent Council, I know, have been involved in something called the learner profile work that's taken place. So Advanced Learning Partnerships, in collaboration with the district, have, if you remember, Gaynell, Lori, and Julie had done some focus group work around the learner profile. And as we look at that, one of the areas that has come out of that is communication. Like, how do we get and ensure that young people are communicating well with each other? And that doesn't mean I'm texting, I'm sending that, but actually like face-to-face and interpersonal skills. And so as we look at all of that work that we do, thinking very strategically about how do we make sure that we are giving opportunities for young people to collaborate truly together, not parallel play where we just sit in a space together and do a project together, but how are we really intentionally communicating and collaborating with each other? How are we building those skill sets? So that work is very near and dear to us, and we're doing some intentional things behind the scenes to make sure, as we're looking at our curriculum resources, as we're looking at our instructional strategies, that those things are embedded in so that we support all of that work. Because you're right, I mean, it's the one really negative thing in the pandemic is it's become real easy to become isolated and kind of introverted, and introversion is not a bad thing. It can be it can become too much of a thing, right? And so how do we help support those things? So we're having a lot of conversations around that. We're looking at tools and strategies and things to help with that very issue, because we don't want our young people to lose that skill set. We don't want our young people to become socially isolated, and then that leads to some other things as well. And I'm sure you're going to hear probably a little bit more about that tonight as well. So
yep, thank you.
So yes, Beth, on that note, are there any more questions for Beth and for Frank? We are going to continue with this topic, and our next speaker, thank you, Beth. Thank you, Frank, for being here. I always appreciate having you. You guys have supported us at many times during the school year and previous to this long school year. So thank you very much. We are very grateful to have you. We are going to be continuing this topic of student mental health, of self-care and just an awareness of mental health. And I am going to do a very, very short intro, since I know I want to give her as much time as we can. Carrie, who is the founder of Reset Mind and Body, who I have had the privilege of hearing present at our East Middle School PTO meeting. And she had us as parents pre-pandemic. We were talking about the idea of student mental health at that time, talking about some of the details that students were dealing with so much more than we ever dealt with at this age. And we had all agreed that they were dealing with more academically, they were dealing with more extracurricularly. And she really had us leaving that PTO meeting questioning our roles and questioning, you know, the process of what we were doing and how we were interacting with our students. So I am very happy to present Carrie Biscalosis. I seeing here?
It's okay, Judy.
Oh, there we go. I couldn't find you for a minute.
Yeah.
So I am so happy that you have agreed to join us here. I can't wait for everyone to hear you. And I'm just grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Well, and I'm honored to be here. I've met some of you. Frank, I think last time I saw you, I was 9 months pregnant. And it was like 2 days before the shutdown. So good to see you on the other side of it all. But I just want to start off saying that I'm grateful to hear what I've heard tonight. I am going to be a P-CCS parent here in the next couple of years. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, 2 boys, and they should be going to Bird in the next few years. And so it's been a passion of mine to understand what's going on in our school district, to help and support and educate as much as I can when it comes to mental health. And so I'm always warmed to hear all of the things that the district is doing. And I feel like from the moment that I moved here 3 years ago and the high school brought me in to do a PD, that there was hope in that we were going to be able to empower these kids and really put mental health on a platform in the community. So thank you for continuing to prioritize it. And Beth and Frank, I'm really excited to hear all the things that you're doing with the committee. So I think, you know, there's a fair amount of you on this. And so I want to keep it as interactive as we can. I want you to feel like you can interrupt, ask questions, wave your hand, drop into the chat, because I want to hear from you as well and what you're experiencing. You know, it's interesting to me, Judy and I talked about what I was going to talk about tonight, and we were talking about, let's talk about trauma, let's talk about the parents. When we talk to parents, we're talking about families, we're inadvertently talking about children. And just yesterday, I had a friend reach out to me and just say, hey, I really need to talk to you. My 13-year-old's struggling. And her and I went on a walk, and it was almost like a rehearsal for tonight, because everything that she was saying is exactly what Judy's been communicating and exactly what we're seeing in just the field in our practice with all of our clients, that people are struggling like they've never struggled before. And we're having a hard time naming it and normalizing it. And so that's why we're going to talk about trauma. I think a lot of times we think trauma are these huge events, right? You have the death of a loved one, a suicide has occurred, there's been a car accident, a health issue. I mean, even so much as war and crime and just overall violence, abuse happening in the home. And I think what we fail to recognize is that those are kind of what I like to call big T traumas. And then there are all the small T traumas. And I think because we don't give enough attention to these small T traumas and actually name and label them as traumas, we miss the opportunity to validate someone's experience. And by doing that, then they start to feel isolated, alone, not heard, not seen, and ashamed, really embarrassed to ask for help. I actually, when I was in graduate school, I felt just awkward that I didn't have like a tragedy that brought me into the mental health field, because it kind of felt like everyone came from this really deep pain. And I remember sitting there being like, well, gosh, like nothing huge has happened to me yet. And so do I even have a place here? And even in that moment, feeling like, should I even be a counselor if I don't know what it's like to have experienced a big T trauma, I think is what has led to us continuing to just not be able to open up the doors of actually talking about mental health with more people, and more people feeling like they have permission to ask for help. And so with small T traumas, I think it's important to give value to things like emotional neglect, verbal scoldings, belittling that's happening in home, amongst peers, school, bullying, toxic environments, whether that's at the home, work, school for kids, general chronic stress, and then mistakes and failures. And when we think about this last year, a lot of those things had already been happening, right? Kind of like how Judy was talking, that we, in 2019, before the pandemic, we were talking about the pressures that kids are under. And then the pandemic happened. And the pandemic is a big T trauma, right? That is constant threat of safety, health, something bad gonna happen. And that's really how we define a trauma, is that if you feel unsafe, if you feel like there's a threat to yourself. And the pandemic wasn't just 6 weeks, right? We all know this. It kept going on and on and on. And every time we had to face the world, friends, do errands, go to school, work, seeing loved ones, all came with a threat. So there was this big T trauma that we all faced, and some of us maybe faced it and did better than other people. But either way, it was layered with then many, many small T traumas. And when we are in a trauma response, we do not operate at our normal state, right? That normal mindset that we might expect of ourselves. We operate in fight, flight, or freeze. So those of you that are aware of how the brain works, please just follow me with this. And those of you that aren't, I hope that I can make it really simple. So essentially, fight, flight, or freeze is how we respond when we are under acute or even chronic stress. And so when we are in a trauma response, right, and I'm talking about a chronic trauma response like the pandemic created for us, we are constantly in this survival mode. And when we're in that mode, we are not operating out of our executive functioning, our regulatory prefrontal cortex part of the brain that is there for decision-making and judgment and focus and kind of our wise mind. Instead, we're operating out of the survival parts of our brain. And we're just simply trying to get our needs met. And when we're in a trauma response, we're also hypervigilant, we're overwhelmed, we're overactive, we can be impulsive, we're anticipating threats, we're quick to anger, quick to react, irritable, and then we also can completely shut down. So because the pandemic put most of us in this state 100% of the time, we started to normalize being in the trauma response state, that like, oh, this is just what we're all doing. This is what we have to do. But we didn't, I don't think we gave enough emphasis to the fact that this was then debilitating to our ability to operate again at our higher functioning levels. And so we were told to show up to work. I mean, all of you that had to work from home while homeschooling your children and keeping them focused on computers. And oh my God, I just kept saying, I am so grateful I don't have kids in elementary school right now. Like, I was so grateful my kids were young enough that I didn't have to try and school them while working full time, my husband at home, the dog at home. I mean, it's so chaotic, right? But we were expected to like be on and answer emails and take conference calls and also deal with our own fears, or at least ignore them. And the same thing was happening to our kids and our teachers and our administrators and everyone, right? Like everyone was just, we were just trying to pivot, but we weren't pivoting, acknowledging the fact that we were all under trauma response. And so we were told to show up to these places and to operate as normal, concentrate, focus, do a good job, behave well, don't be impulsive. And we didn't do well, right? A lot of us felt like failures. We were making mistakes. We were dropping balls. And so we were putting our stressed, anxious selves in these scenarios and not expecting a trauma response. We were expecting within ourselves a normal response. Does that resonate with any of you? Do you feel it? Okay, feeling some head nodding. All right, cool. All right, so I want to just run down a list of things that might feel familiar to you or not. Over planning, exercising too much, being restless, fidgeting, needing control, being impatient, having a harsh inner critic, staying super busy, having a hard time falling asleep or staying asleep, perfectionism, restricting food, drinking too much or other substance use, overworking, attention-seeking behaviors, saying yes and overcommitting, not wanting to disappoint people, preoccupation with your appearance, overanalyzing events in the past and future, and having intense, intrusive thoughts. Raise your hand if you feel like you've experienced any of that, or you've seen other people experience any of that in the last year. Cool. So that, all of those things can be anxiety. All of that can look like anxiety. All that is anxiety manifested in different ways. So when I talk about this trauma response, right, this hypervigilance, it may not be that you're, going like this all the time, looking around your shoulder. It could be that you are working more than you've ever worked in your life, or you are not eating carbs or sugar because like that's all that you can control in this moment. It might look like saying yes to everything because if you fill your calendar and you're busy all the time, then you won't have to be alone with the scary and intrusive thoughts. It might be the sudden panic attacks in the shower where you're thinking and overthinking the conversation that you had with someone, or your visit to the grocery store and did you wash your hands a number of times, right? Okay, so I just want to normalize the fact that all of that I just listed was anxiety. And that's okay. All right, other ones now, other examples. Lack of energy, unmotivated or uninterested, irritable, general unpleasantness, feeling stuck, avoidance, rebelling or numbing out, unexplainable crying spells, hard time making decisions, hard time being compassionate towards others, saying no more than usual, not being interested in food or eating or anything that you would generally be interested in, watching a ton of TV, scrolling, playing a lot of video games, hard time finishing projects, fixating on mistakes, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, hard time being optimistic or positive. What do we think that is? Depression. Yeah, depression. It can show up looking like a lot of different things. So many people tell me, wait, you're telling me that irritability, anger is a sign of depression? Like, yeah, because this person, and I mean, I've experienced it before myself. Like, you just get mad that nothing feels to be going right. You get angry that no one seems to understand how awful your experience of the world is. And like, how can no one else see this? And you just are quick to fly off the handle. And so we so often misinterpret what people are doing and how they're acting and how we even ourselves are behaving. And it's actually anxiety or depression. Or we start to celebrate things that are actually anxiety. Wow, you're so detail oriented. You're so perfect all the time. You're always on time. You always say the right thing. And I'm like, actually, that person's having like an inner dialogue of anxiety all the time. So it's really important just to be aware of all the different ways this stuff shows up. Other things when it comes to like just physical manifestations, weight gain or loss, headaches, migraines, stomach aches, nausea, being tired all the time, being achy, your muscles are sore, just having general pain throughout your body, and brain fog. All can be attributed to suffering with something with your mental health. And then in general, and I think we can all relate to a lot of these, difficulty regulating emotions, vacillating between extreme feelings, like really happy one minute and then just completely raw and unable to control yourself the next moment, unable to control impulses, changes in relationships, avoidance, loss of hope and faith, feeling an untethered sense of identity, feeling on edge or raw, like feeling like you could cry at any moment, and inability to concentrate. Those are actually symptoms of complex PTSD. And I want to pause there because so much of what I explained, a lot of you might be like, well, wait a second. Isn't that just parenting? Isn't that just like living life that I experienced those things? I've been feeling that way before the pandemic. And yeah, you probably have. And that's the thing that we just fail to give enough credit to, is that parenting in general is traumatic. First of all, not only for the woman and whomever it is, you know, if you are giving birth, that is very traumatic in itself, an experience. But then it's all the things that come along with being a parent. It's the loss of self, independence, agency. It's all the sacrifice and the compromising and trying to cohabitate with other humans. My cousin once told me when his kids got old enough, he said, they were no longer children, they were my roommates. And then I had to learn how to live with more roommates. He's like, I thought I was over this in my life. That's hard, right? It's always trying to do the right thing, the best thing, to be perfect. It's comparing ourselves to other parents. It's being anxious all the time. It's worrying all the time. Like, all of that is really traumatic. Having a child, being a parent, is inherently a vulnerable experience, and it feels like there is a threat to you or your loved ones all the time. Now, how many parents do you think would walk around being like, yep, I've got complex PTSD just because I'm a parent? I wish, right? Because then we could validate each other's experiences. We could say like, yeah, this is really, really hard. So I just want to, all of us, to take a moment and just recognize most of us probably are struggling with something in our mental health. And it's really, really important for us as adults to recognize that, so that then we can start recognizing it in our children and giving them permission to feel. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from this man. He's a social worker, and I did a training of his a couple of years ago about intergenerational trauma. And man, that's a fun subject. So if you ever want me to speak again, we can dig into intergenerational trauma because it's enlightening. But he said, because we have never recovered from our historical trauma, we have a high tolerance for trauma without taking action. I'm going to repeat it just because I think it's really important. Because we have never recovered from our historical trauma, we have a high tolerance for trauma without taking action. So if we know as parents, we have been through trauma and we're kind of facing trauma all the time. But if we have never recovered from that, if we've never given ourselves a moment to say, whew, this is a lot, this is hard. I actually think I have anxiety, or I actually think I went through postpartum depression, or I think I'm experiencing that now. Or if we even look back, you know, my mom, my dad really struggled, and that really affected me. And I don't know if I ever dealt with the trauma of my own childhood. We then build this tolerance for more and more things that happen without taking action, without doing anything about it. So it just piles on. And that's got to go somewhere. A lot of times it ends up in our waistline for women. It ends up with a beer can for a lot of other people. And then it just passes down to the next generation, right? Again, I won't go into too many details about it. But because we failed to admit that we're struggling at earlier moments in our life, moments that are completely valid to be struggling, we just continue to pile it on. We let that spill over into our social circles, our work, our children, our families, how we parent. And we need to validate all of these experiences. We need to actually say like, oh yeah, this was all traumatic. And again, that's giving credence to the small t traumas. Just because you didn't have someone that died or had a car accident or whatever, had, you know, abuse in your family doesn't mean you haven't been through trauma. Doesn't mean you don't need to process and heal and ask for help and just release some of that. So a lot of times it's starting with that awareness for ourselves. What have I actually been through? What has my childhood looked like? Like, what has happened recently even? And then to talk about it with a friend, talk about it with a parent, be like, hey, I feel like we need to talk about what happened when I was 12, right? Talking about it with a sibling, talking about it with your partner, talking about it with a professional, because we need to accept those feelings of struggle. And so often it's our denial of our trauma that creates the suffering. And we have to, as adults, as parents, model vulnerability, courage, and not having it all together, and not being okay, not being perfect, or being okay, not being perfect, so that we can liberate our own children to feel comfortable doing it. Okay, who here is a fan of Brene Brown? Right? Like, I'm a total fangirl. I like to say I'm an early adopter of her, but I don't know. So I listened to a podcast of hers, I don't even know when, and she was telling this story of, she got home from a work trip, and Brene Brown is like famous for saying that she's an introvert. And she got home from a work trip and she was exhausted. She was flown out to California. She had to talk to all these tech guys, and it's her son's baseball game. And her husband and her son are at this baseball game. She knows that she should go. She knows that, like, to be a good mother, she should show up and cheer on her kid, even though she just was on a 5-hour flight and she's wiped out. And she decided to not go. She went upstairs, took a shower, laid down, took a nap. So her son and her husband come home, and she, goes downstairs and she's like, yeah, I'm really sorry, but I realized that I needed alone time. I had been giving, and I really needed to just be alone and take care of myself. And her husband and her son were like, okay, cool. Yeah, whatever, do what you gotta do. Now, a couple of weeks later, it's her son's birthday, and she's like, hey, can I have your list for your birthday? What do you want for presents? And he gives her his list, and the first thing on the list says alone time. And she was like, okay, he's never asked for this. Like, this was a, oh no moment. What's wrong with my kid? What is, what are we not addressing? So she goes and talks to him, and he's like, Mom, I never knew I could ask for that. I never knew that I could ask for alone time. We go and we do things, and we have all these errands we have to run. I've got sports practices. We're always on the go. And, sometimes I don't like that. I need to recharge. And I didn't know that I could ask for alone time. So thank you for telling me that I could ask for alone time. And it's just, I think, a beautiful example of modeling, right? Modeling what we need, taking care of ourselves, so that we give permission to our children to ask for the same and to be vulnerable in those moments. Okay, so I'm saying all of this. What do we do with it? It's always the question, like, all right, cool. So now that I know this, what do I do? I think you guys have heard many, many times self-care. To me, okay, I'm not gonna lie, like, self-care makes my skin crawl, because so often I feel like pop culture has made self-care seem like massages and, women go get your nails done and, go for a run, or I don't know, even like have a glass of wine. And it's more than that, and it has to be bigger than that. So first, we have to accept as parents that despite the fact that we are taught that in order to be a good parent, we must sacrifice and compromise and be completely selfless, we cannot lose ourselves. We cannot be martyrs. Because if you are a parent that has lost themselves, you're no longer being able to show up and model again, this is how to ask for what you need. This is how to advocate for yourself. And so we need to make sure that we're not entering into parenting with this expectation that we must give, and just completely lose ourselves. I hear from so many clients that say, well, My kids are number one priority. My spouse or partner's number two. The dog, probably three. The house, number four. And then I guess I'm number five on the list. Yeah, I don't think that system's working out for many people. We have to be number one. And so many people say, well, that's so selfish. It's so selfish, but it's not, right? Like, we have to take care of ourselves before we are good enough to take care of other people. I think a lot of you know that. So I like to talk about two different categories. One is what I think is like the fundamental five, and that is sleep, movement, fuel, breath, and connection. Fundamental five. These are kind of like the five preventative fundamental truths that we have to check in with ourselves on to be like, okay, I'm not feeling great. What needs to be recalibrated? What needs to be reset? Am I sleeping at least 7 hours a week or 7 hours a week? Oh my gosh, probably newborn stage, right? 7 hours a night, at least. And this is for adults. We could talk about kids. They need more than 9 hours. Sleeping. Am I moving my body in an authentic way? Not I need to get myself to boot camp, or I really should go on that run. It's like, no, doing movement that feels good for you. Is that playing soccer with your kids in the backyard? Is it going on a walk? Is it going and just doing some stretches in your living room while you're watching a TV show? But just moving in some regard. Am I fueling my body? Now, I get it. It's like meal prepping is this elusive thing that people say we should all do, but is so hard to do. It's so frustrating. But do I have options that make my body feel better versus worse, right? We know that there's a link between inflammation and mental health. So much of the standard American diet is inflammatory foods. And so just giving ourselves a little bit of help and just saying, all right, like maybe I'll lay off the donuts because I don't think that's doing well for me, even though they taste really good and it's a really good coping mechanism, at least like not every morning, right? Am I fueling my body to give it the biggest chance of fighting off whatever it is that I'm dealing with? Am I breathing? And of course, we're all breathing, but am I giving myself deep breaths of rest, of pause, of slowing down, even just before bed, right? Unplugging, putting your phone in a different room, just giving yourselves that break. And am I connecting? Am I connecting to myself? Am I connecting to my spouse? Am I connecting to my children? And I'll touch more on that, on like how we can do all of these things in a little bit. Am I connecting to friends? All right, fundamental five: sleep, move, fuel, breath, and connection. And there's no, well, actually, I would say maybe that's, no, I wouldn't say that they're in order of importance. They're all important, but sleep is number one always. Okay, and then there's the necessary 8. And so these are feelings that we want to feel throughout our day, throughout our week. Like we want to just be able to feel these things. Collaboration, they all start with C, so it makes your life easier, right? The necessary 8 all start with C. Collaboration, creativity, compassion, confidence, clarity, calm, curiosity, and courage. Collaboration, creativity, compassion, confidence, clarity, calm, curiosity, and courage. The necessary 8. When we feel these things, usually we're operating out of an authentic and optimal self. And so it's trying to figure out ways, how can I feel these things? How can I feel these things throughout my week, throughout my month? What are the activities, the people, the things that help me feel this way? I'm curious if you guys have a moment, maybe take a second to jot down anything instinctually that comes up for you when you think about the fundamental 5 and the necessary 8. If there's anything that comes to mind and you even want to share it in the chat, I welcome you to do that. And this can be really simple. I know for me, I feel calm, compassionate, creative, curious, connected, clear when I'm outside, right? If I just get outside and if I drink my coffee while looking at the birds, if I see one cardinal a week, I feel really great. So it doesn't have to be like this, oh, I need to start up a craft bin. It can be really simple. Okay, let's keep going. Oh yeah, anyone have anything to say? No, okay. All right, so additionally, for parents, I'm talking to a parent council, so I'm just assuming people are parents or know of parents. It's important that you align on parenting styles. So I have a 4-year-old, well, he'll turn 4 in about 3 weeks. And you would think like having a therapist for a mom that I have the most calm, emotionally intelligent child in the world, right? Yeah, well, I don't. I mean, we work on it, but he's 3, he still has temper tantrums. But it was really insightful. One day he told me, you know, he gets this scrunched up face when he gets mad, like really, it's almost like, you know, he's about to do something pretty naughty. And sometimes because I'm worried he's going to do something that could hurt his younger brother, I yell at him, right? Stop, no, ah. And then he yells back at me. Don't yell at me. And I'm like, buddy, why are you yelling at me? Don't yell at me. I'm a grown up. He's like, well, I'm yelling because you're yelling. And I was like, you're right. You're right. I shouldn't yell. I'm yelling because I'm scared. I'm yelling because I don't know how else to get your attention in this moment. And then he's yelling back, and then we yell, and it's just like, ugh. How often does that happen in our house, right? It's just a who's gonna yell louder to finally think that like, that's what's gonna make them listen. Our kids pick up on our energy. They respond to how we react. We react to how they respond. And so as parents, trying to get aligned on how do we approach tough situations, trying to avoid big temper outbursts, avoiding unpredictable mood swings. One of the biggest things that as parents, it's important to try and avoid is blaming and shaming. I remember there was a moment when my son did something in particularly, I don't even know what it was. And I said, right, I asked, why did you do that to a 3-year-old? He doesn't know why he did that. But I say, what's wrong with you? Oh, it makes my skin crawl to even think that I said that out loud. What's wrong with you? Now, thankfully, he's 3 and it won't be embedded into his psyche just yet to then create a whole narrative about how he's a horrible person. But, so I'm hoping I'm catching it early, but how many kids haven't had that opportunity where a parent catches those shame statements early enough to say, ooh, wow, I don't think that's a right statement to say. That doesn't feel productive. What's wrong with you then becomes just a bed for them to continually feel not good enough. We do that to ourselves. That happened to us when we were kids. We do it to our partners. What's wrong with you? That's shame. That's belittling. It's blaming. So we have to try and do a little bit better. And by doing a little bit better, I mean cultivating safety, honesty, trust, predictability, conscious, calm responses. And that's when I go back up to how do we take care of ourselves so that we show up more intentional, calmer, less stressed for our children. We have to practice freedom and releasing control. I love when I get parents of teenagers and they're like, they are so rebellious. They won't listen to anything I say. And I'm like, yeah, that's their job. That is legitimately what they're supposed to be doing right now, because they need to exercise some sort of control. They're going to be 18 soon. They're going to be out of the house soon. They need to develop some agency and some confidence. And you, dear parent who's anxious and has been going through PTSD, complex trauma since you had this child, need to learn how to release control. You need to recognize that it's their job to push back, right? But we grasp, we hold, we're scared. We haven't dealt with our own stuff, but it's their job to push back. One of the other ways that I love how partners can foster connection in their home, right? Going back to the fundamental 5, connection. Our couples counselor here talks about these emotional identification check-ins. Now, my husband's married to a therapist, so he always has to talk about his feelings all the time. I feel like we emotionally identify multiple times throughout the day. He's lucky like that. But it's always surprising to me to hear how parents don't check in with each other. Don't say, how are you feeling? How was this week? Anything come up for you? This is what I mean by these EICs, emotional identification check-ins. What do you have going on? Are there any big emotions that have come up this week? Anything that we need to talk about? And not letting the other person off the hook. Like, you can identify at least one emotion. It could be, I've been bored. Okay, that's an emotion, that's fine. But connecting to our partner. And you could also bring this to the dinner table. You could bring this to your children, checking in on an emotional level. So I have a couple stories in relation to my own kid. He, of course, gets overwhelmed and his emotions take over him. And a lot of times parents will say, go sit in a timeout, right? Again, that's that shaming. I don't want you around me right now because you're just too much. That's the message we're sending our children. So we try to allow him to have the temper tantrum in the middle of everything. Kitchen floor, kitchen table, I don't care. I want him to feel like his feelings are allowed in our space, in our home. And more often than not, the thing that he needs in that moment is a hug. And even when I'm like really mad at him, I know that if I just give him a hug and I squeeze him tight for 20 seconds, we're both going to calm down. We're going to, again, connect. And so rather than pushing our kids away when they're feeling, we got to bring them in. And I think, Beth, you said that. You said we got to wrap our arms around these kids more. And so it's just a reframing of what we've been told, that we ostracize someone when they have big feelings. We need to instead bring them in for a hug. So I know that sometimes we, though, get really, really mad and like just have to let it out. And one of the ways that I love that parents can model how to deal with their own big emotions is that, let's say your kid is right next to you and they are just, they're not listening and they're doing this annoying habit over and over and over again. Rather than yelling at them, turning around, opening up maybe the screen door or a closet door or a pantry door and yelling into it. Right? It feels really good to yell. That's why we yell at each other. It feels really good. It's an emotional release. It gets out that energy, right? We're in fight, flight, or freeze. We need to get it out. So we yell at something else other than our child. And then your child would be like, what the heck just happened? I think my mom or dad is like going nuts. And then you turn around and you say, I'm mad, but I'm not yelling at you. I'm just angry and I need to let out my feelings. I need to release. And that's really important modeling of the behavior, because what we're saying is it's okay to release. It's okay to get mad. It's okay to feel big things. Just don't be mean to someone, right? Don't do it to someone else. Figure it out how to do it, but I'm not going to ostracize you. I'm not going to say, go to your room. I'm going to say, okay, open the pantry door and just yell into it. Yell so loud that you feel like you're shaking the beans on the shelf. That's okay. This goes back to what I've been talking about, right? Is validating feelings, validating experiences. It's okay to feel big things. It's a safe space to express your emotion. I am not going to shame you or ostracize you for having big feelings. I'm going to fly through the next couple of things because I'm cognizant of time. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, other things that we need to recognize, and this kind of goes back to just how we operate as humans, is that we have to recognize that we need to identify the values that we want to drive behavior from. And so often in our families, in our cultures, we end up driving our behavior from toxic values. Values like comparison, perfectionism, a limited definition of success, things that drive our behavior out of fear, shame, not feeling good enough, or to avoid negative consequences. Now, I know from working in this field for many years that when people operate out of those values, they are always inauthentic, they're always misaligned with who they really are, and they always end up feeling like total junk about themselves because they're like, how did I get here? I don't like this. This is too much. It's too much pressure. I don't even know who I am anymore. And they crumble. And so as families, it's important to check in. What are our family's core values? What do we want to align our behaviors on? And then rather than trying to fit into the mold of our culture and system, we set that foundational values, and then we as a family operate out of that. We're not going to let culture and the systems define it. We define it for ourselves. So then that might mean that, you know, Abby misses soccer practice one night and she only goes to the game because we don't value toxic work environments or, you know, having to just brave the things that are uncomfortable for the sake of doing what's right, right? We have to look at all of the things and the pressures we put on ourselves and our children, and what are our actual values driving that? Is an A grade for who? What is the purpose of that, right? Is going to school every single day actually what your kids needs or not? Is you taking vacation and taking time off work and leaving that conference call so you can pick up your kid from school? You know, all of the things that we do have to come from a value that feels authentic and good for everyone in your family versus what we think we should be operating from. That comparison, that judgment, that success. Now that's a deeper conversation that I think could take many, many weeks and days to talk about as a family, but I want to at least just toss that to you as something that might be important to talk about with your spouse or your kids or whomever's in your family unit. Okay. When someone is having a big emotion or when someone is feeling something, how many of you have heard the phrase, okay, I'm gonna back up. Your kid falls. You're okay. It wasn't that big of a deal. Just get up. It's only a scratch. Come on, you're okay. One of the most important things I learned as a new parent was it's not you're okay. It's are you okay? Validating statements, making statements without judgment, us being able to respond as parents without taking things personally, without being defensive, without making it feel like it's our fault and then we need to fix it for them. The best thing we can do is listen. I know I can't understand, but I'm listening, right? Because when your 12-year-old is like, well, Sally said this and Dylan said that, and, you know, blah, 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 and you're like, I get it. I remember when I was a teen. They'll be like, you don't get it. You don't understand. And it's true. We don't understand. We are not our teens. We are not these kids. They have unique situations that we, when we were teenagers, never had to experience. I know I can't understand, but I'm listening. That to them is like, oh, okay. They're not trying to make it about them. They're not trying to fix it. Tell me more. Your emotions make sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just asking more and more questions, getting curious, not trying to fix it for them. A lot of times they just need to talk it out. And we, because we are operating from our trauma, our anxiety, we try and fix it. My kid needs to be safe. We need to be safe. I don't want them being vulnerable. Oh my gosh. It's okay. They will get it. They will get the hang of it, but we have to validate it. We have to let them to process it. We have to allow them to build resiliency, see that they can have confidence in solving things for themselves, or at least being able to calm down. just sitting with them, hugging them, not expecting them to talk. It's okay if they don't. They just need to know that you're there without judgment, without shame, without taking it personally. So a lot of statements that I hear, you're okay, everything will be all right, it's not that bad, don't worry, toughen up, calm down, could be worse, just let it go, you're exaggerating, don't worry about it. I know some of you have said that before. I've said it too. My kid's on this whole like heaven kick and like all about people dying. And there was a moment where I was like, don't worry about it. And he's like, but I want to worry about it. I need to worry about it. I'm worrying about it. And I was like, whoa, you're right. I need to validate. I can't tell you don't worry about it. That's not my place. This is your stuff. And I need to give you space for that. Okay, ways to cultivate this tangibly. Instituting a safe chair. A room or chair in your house that you know that if anyone sits in, no judgment. You will listen, you will provide empathy. Everyone has that same expectation. Institute this young and early so that everyone knows and utilize it with you and your partner too. Safe chair, anything goes. They can say anything. It doesn't mean there's not consequences, right? If your kids sit down and they're like, yeah, you know, I got high 4 times last week. You're not gonna be like, cool, yeah, I don't judge that and you're good. No, it's like, okay, there will still be consequences, but I'm gonna allow you to talk and I'm gonna listen and we're gonna come up with solutions together. Safe chair. I know this is hard. I know this is hard, but family dinners, at least one night a week even, but no screens, no TV, family dinners, even if it's just 20 minutes, a family dinner or family right now, like maybe we can do family breakfast or at least Sunday mornings, make something of a routine, but a time when everyone truly is together. And the 20-minute rule. I know a lot of you are busy. I know your kids are busy. 20 minutes a day with each one of your children of undivided attention. This is not you being on their phone, them being on their phone. This is you guys talking while you're cooking together. And it's really just you and them just talking and sharing. It's laying in their bed at night and just laying there for 20 minutes. It's reading books to your kids if they're younger. It's going on a car ride, not listening to music, not listening to a podcast. It's taking them on a walk. 20 minutes, undivided attention with each of your children. And ideally, you and your spouse both do this. But if it's just one parent, that's enough. That can be okay. But I truly want you to think about like how much 20 minutes of undivided attention is and if you actually do that. Because I know a lot of us are like, oh yeah, I do that. And they're like, well, actually, no, I had that phone call and then I responded to that email. And then the other kid was crying. That doesn't count.
Carrie, I'm wondering if the comment that's in the chat right now might tie very well into this. She put, older youth, they're so good at masking their emotions. And during the pandemic, many of them have been isolated from their natural support systems.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, you know, specific, I know 20 minutes, what does 20 minutes look like with a middle school or a high school age student? So do you have any specific guidance for parents or caregivers of middle school and high school age students?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I had a client who, she has twins, seniors in high school. And she was like, well, you know, with Abby, the daughter, you know, she can talk to me. We talk, right? It's just easy to talk as girls and we'll talk in the car. And I feel like I really get those 20 minutes. She's like, but with my son, it just doesn't seem to click. Like he doesn't want to talk to me in his bedroom. He doesn't want me coming into his room at all. And so I said, okay, find something that he likes to do. What is he passionate about? Do that. And so for a lot of parents are like, well, I don't know what my kid likes, or I haven't really thought about that. Ask them, what do you enjoy? What are some ways that we can connect, right? You might learn something about your kid you never knew before. You know, what if they love puzzles and you never do? Puzzles, by the way, is a really good thing to do. Institute. I find them incredibly boring, but if I'm able to talk to someone while I'm doing it, a little bit better. But finding what they like and then meeting them there. Maybe they like playing sports. Maybe they like crafting. Maybe they like drawing, doing what they like to do, not what you think they should be doing. And I know some of you will be like, well, my kid only likes playing video games. Is there a way that that can be connection? Play with them. I once had a client, speaking of screen addiction, their son was addicted and procrastinating with so many issues. And I said, okay, make it a rule that the only time he plays video games is when one of you is playing with him. Mom or dad has to play with him. Then it becomes connection. It becomes something more than him being isolated and alone. Watching TV, you watch TV as a family. Netflix in their room? No. YouTube? No. You watch a family show. That can be connection. I know growing up, my mom and I used to watch Gilmore Girls. That was our thing. And that felt good. Every week we knew that was our thing. Does that help? Pam? They are good at masking their emotions, and that's why we just have to create more opportunities to connect. Eventually they'll crack. Eventually they'll share something. We have to show up every single day. We cannot let them push us out, because they will, and it's easy. And they'll be like, oh, they hate me. No, 20 minutes a day. So much stress and anxiety, especially to social media. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so you guys, those of you that know me, if I had my way, none of us would have smartphones. Truly, none of, like, email on our phones, internet on our phones, YouTube, social media, none of us would have it. Now, I recognize that during the pandemic, our kids relied on social media as a way to connect. And I know that's why Beth and her team is looking at more ways that we can have kids connect in person. We have to have limits with our children. How they are, this is what I think a lot of people don't understand. You know, they're like, my kid won't get off their phone. They cannot self-regulate. They do have screen addiction. It is real and it is happening because all of us as adults have it too. A 12-year-old's brain cannot allow themselves to turn off their phone on their own. They can't do that. Like, literally, they cannot regulate themselves to do that. And then we set them up for failure by saying, like, you need to turn it off at 9 o'clock every night. And if it's not, you're going to be grounded and I'm going to take it away. No, help them train themselves to do it. Help them set the habit. So I digress, but Sophia, it's a real issue. I wish kids just didn't have social media, to be honest, truly. I wish that we could go back to just texting and FaceTiming. And gosh, do I miss AIM now? Like, that was so innocent back in the day. But the fact is that TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, they just get too much that we know is an algorithm meant to keep them on it. It is just complete brainwash. And so the more that we can get them off of that, the better, because then they'll come to you more, or you force it upon them. And I know that they're going to talk to their friends. Everyone talks to their friends about stuff, but we just have to keep asking questions. When they say, I'm fine, maybe that's not the right question you asked then. Ask a different question. Ask a more engaging question. What are you proud of? What was something that was really funny that happened today? Tell me a story. Not, how was your day? How are you doing? No one likes answering those questions. We have to get creative, which again goes back to, we have to take care of ourselves to have the capacity to meet our children at this deeper level. I don't know if that answered your question, Sophia, other than throw away the phones, but maybe someday we'll get to that point. If you think about it, smartphones have really only been around for a decade. Talk about the long-term effects. We don't know. I mean, I don't think our society has gotten better from smartphones. Sure, we can now have maps on our phone, but other than that, that's a soapbox for another day. Anything else? I know we are at time, so I want to be respectful. If you are wondering where to reach me or my team or more resources, I, again, am the owner and founder of Reset Brain and Body. We are downtown Plymouth. I'm looking at the Penn Theater from my office, right in that shared parking lot with the gathering. We have 16 clinicians, but demand is high right now. A lot of people are asking for mental health, and the mental health field has never experienced this much demand before. Mental health care has never been cool, and now people are actually utilizing it, and our field is struggling to keep up. So you will experience wait lists almost anywhere where you call. And so me and my team are really trying to figure out, like, how do we meet the demand in a more scalable, accessible way? So trying to innovate how people get access to mental health care, doing things like this where we can have a broader effect is important, because we just don't have the bandwidth in our field right now for everyone to have a one-on-one therapist. So we're trying to be more creative.
I noticed that when I was looking at the website, when we were setting up our meeting, that you also have groups that are designed for elementary, middle school. Did I also see high school? I know I saw elementary, but it was kind of, it was Vibe Tribe, and they like kind of slow down, and probably a lot of the talk that you're talking right now and kind of that guidance for younger people.
Yeah, we do a lot of preventative, what Beth was calling kind of mental wellness, mental fitness. I believe full-heartedly in preventative. I don't think you have to be in crisis to ask for help. I think that you can start addressing this stuff really early. So we have the Vibe Tribe. It's for elementary and middle schoolers. We're doing it in a summer camp fashion this way. So it's a week in June, and then we have another one running in a week in August. And it's gonna be outdoors. So yeah, it's a great opportunity for kids to learn some of these emotional regulatory skills and just have fun while doing it.
Are there any questions for Carrie before we let her go? Let me see. Oh, Anupam just said, this has been very helpful. We're wondering if parent council might considering ongoing conversations. It's so important, and we're just opening doors. Absolutely. I think our parent council, I know that we had one of our very first parent council meeting that we had one of our very own, Val Swift, who came. It was like we were dedicated to mental health right from the beginning, because previous to the pandemic, it was already a constant awareness on all of our parents who were at our parent council meetings minds. So Carrie, I really appreciate you coming and kind of helping us through this, getting back to normal, from the abnormal to, and we don't know kind of where we're going from here, and kind of really reigniting some of our things that we need to be reminded about, which should be our focuses to move out from here. You are always a tremendous wealth of information and just calm for me whenever we've met, and I hope we intersect sometime soon, because it was great to hear from you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you to everyone that listened on. I told my own therapist today when I was a little bit nervous, I said, if one person is more empathetic towards themselves, towards someone they love, towards a stranger, then I did my job today. So hopefully that we can start spreading a little bit more empathy and understanding for what we're all going through. So thank you all. Take care. Have a lovely night. Stay cool. Thank you again, Judy.
Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you being here. With that, with going forward, keeping ourselves in mind of being empathetic to all those around us, I want to move on and give our EEF Executive Director, Gretchen Ward, some time to let us know at this end of the year time what EEF is doing and what is going on with you. Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, everyone. Great to be back here. You all know I love and enjoy the time that Parent Council gives us. And kudos to Parent Council for putting this meeting together. One of the things I appreciate about these meetings is they're always so timely with the time of the year and what parents need to be thinking about. And the time for this couldn't have been any better. And I loved that it was such a complete, we're looking from the student perspective, but parents have needs too. And I think that this was just a great job to start the conversation and continue these throughout the summer and into the next school year. So kudos to you guys. Thanks for putting this together. So regarding the EEF, at the end of the year, we are continuing and wrapping up with our Thank a Teacher, Salute a Staff campaign. But rather than hear it from me, I'm going to ask Nick to pull up a video. Here at the foundation, we always love to highlight the student talent we have in the district. And so we asked them to put a little video together explaining what this campaign is. So Nick, if you could throw that up and take it away.
Plymouth Canton Community Schools is wrapping up a year like no other. Whether your student was in the virtual academy or the Safe Start program, school looked very different. The EEF wants to help families recognize P-CCS staff that went above and beyond this year.
Thank a teacher, salute a staff is a way to say thank you. Perhaps this is a teacher who held extra Zoom calls after school, or the bus driver that greeted our students with a big smile behind their mask. By donating to the EEF in honor of this person, your gift will not only recognize their many contributions, but also allow the EEF to continue to support teachers, staff, and students in all buildings for years to come.
Oh, we missed the cutest part at the end, Nick. Those were little kids that said, "Thank you, teachers." That was Mrs. Dillon's kindergarten class that is this year. But
let me run it after you're done. I'll run it back. You're right. It is the cutest part. It is the cutest part.
You know what? You can also find it on our Facebook page. We've posted that. But really, thank you, teachers, salute to staff is really a way for us to end the school year on a positive note. You know, there's been so many difficulties and so many things that have been hard this year. It's easy to dwell on those, but what we want to do is finish out the school year strong and remember all the positive things that happened and all of the glimmers of brightness that happened. And not just teachers, and teachers have gone above and beyond, but all of our lovely cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, our custodians, whoever went above and beyond. And with a gift to the EEF of $25, this person will receive recognition on our Facebook page, a shout out on our Thank You Thursdays on our EEF webpage and district groups, and also a personalized certificate. And with this certificate, we send it directly to the person, and the family can leave a message and really tell them how they impacted them this year. And I tell you what, I put all those certificates together, and it is so heartwarming to see how thoughtful the messages are and the impact that these teachers and staff have had on families. And when these teachers and staff get these certificates, it is such a wonderful recognition and a real personal thank you. So I encourage folks to consider this as an end of the year gift and a way to thank those that really touched them this year. So for more information on this campaign, you can just go to our website, eefforkids.org. That's eefforkids.org. And all the information is there. So I look forward to ending the year strong with lots of thank yous. And lots of recognition for those that went above and beyond. So, and since this is the last time I'll see everyone, I hope everyone has a great summer, take some time for self-care and rest and vacation and whatever we're gonna do. And I can't wait for next year. Thanks. Right, like how cute is that? Oh, I love the little ones.
Those are some of the cutest masks I've seen all pandemic. Thank you, Gretchen, for the update and for reminding us about the Thank a Teacher campaign. Of course, I know being that last month we ended 15 minutes early, we took back that time and we are ending 15 minutes late, but I think it was well worth it. I want to thank our current board members, Andrea, Sophia, thank you for all that you have done. And thank you, Pam, Andrea and Pam for staying on and for continuing with us. And our new officers, Antoinette and Anne-Marie Garrity. I want to thank Nick Brandon. Thank you very much for technologically and in every other way supporting us in putting this on. I want to specifically thank our district, Nick, our superintendent, Monica Merritt, Beth Rail, and Frank for allowing us to bring Carrie from Reset here. It was something that we felt very passionate about, and I feel very grateful that we have human beings in offices here in this district who value both our student and our parent and family mental health. So I appreciate that. We are going to close out our final meeting. And I want to thank everyone for being here. Nick, do you have any last comments or details?
My last comment is something you'll never say, which is to thank you, President Judy Hart, for everything you've done this school year to keep parent council going at such a strong level. And of course, the entire board. And Sophia, we will miss you very much. It was awesome working with you. And Judy, thanks for your commitment to stay on for another year, leading the charge. And we're excited about the new parent council board, and we'll continue to do amazing things for our students and community through this group. So thank you so much, Judy, for everything you've done for the council.
You bet. Thank you guys for helping and having me here. And thank you all. Everybody have a very nice summer. Our meeting is, oh, I'm sorry. I'm asking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a very nice summer, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.